What I'd like to do now is tell you all a story about how drag racing was back in the day. We'll probably go back to the 50s, and I stumbled up on a two-door 55 Chevrolet station wagon, and the reason I got it because it was so rusted out, nobody else really wanted it. So I put the good engine in it and done some work, got me some sponsorships, people that helped me out, and they did get me a blueprinted engine and a few things like that. It's the company I worked for. So back in them days, when you went to the drag strip, your car class was designated by the factory shipping weight and the cubic inches and horsepower of the engine. So that put me in a stock class. I had no idea what class was going to be when I went, but that was it. So then I read the rule book, and the rule book, amongst other things, said you can't have traction bars longer than half the wheelbase of the car. So that gave me a little hint, maybe that's where it should be. So I made me a set of homemade traction bars, and I made them half the length of the wheelbase. And we take it to the parking lot of a supermarket or a church where they had good white concrete, and we'd go out there and we'd leave us some black marks, and then we'd adjust the traction bars until both marks looked the same, so both tires is pulling what they should. And then in those days you had a flagman, and he stood between the cars right in front of you, and then he give you the go-ahead, and you went as hard as you could, and they had a couple of kids at the other end with flags, and they'd flag on whichever lane won, and that's the way it was. So in my particular class, I had a 265 4-barrel 3-speed. My competition, it was a rough one, was a 57 Chevrolet 283 with a 4-speed, and we'd run off every day. And after a few modifications and tricks that I did on the car, we was able to be pretty consistent in the winter. We took a 3-speed transmission and tried to make it like they was doing to the 4-speeds. The 4-speeds, they'd cut notches or teeth out of the synchronizers, and they could shift it without touching the clutch, just grab it and shove it, and it'd change gears. I tried that with a 3-speed, and the synchronizer was altogether different than the 4-speed. And it pulled itself apart. I'd have to weld it back together, but I finally got it to where it would work. And when I did, then it would jump out of high gear. I couldn't hold it in. I could hold it as hard as I could, but it'd still skip in and out going down the track. And they had a set of levers that was built into the side cover that had little notches in them, and that's what you'd feel when you'd shift it. And the little levers with notches in that went over pins. So anyway, I took that lever for high gear and I cut it real deep to where it couldn't come out of gear. And then in order to get it out of gear, I took a choke cable and run up through there and run it down in the side cover, and I could pull on it and it'd lift the lever and I could get it out of high gear. And when you shift it like that, it'd be wide open, and you hit second gear and it would just shake the whole car and shudder. Say we in high gear, but it was fast. So we did a few things like that, and but at the end of the day, they would take all the stock classes and the winners from them, and they'd run them off, and they called that stock eliminated. And we had an old boy there that had a big Hemi Cuda running super stock, and he'd be in the eliminations. And they handicap you on the national record, whatever it was. They'd compare the two and then give the slower car a head start. And they'd let me go, it seemed like about 5 minutes before he left. And I'd be in high gear just pedaling, and I could hear that thing coming like a freight train. And he'd pass me right there in the at the end of the track. So fast, he was going as fast as it'd make the old car shake sideways. I never did beat that Cuda. He beat me every time. it's uh, it's a very interesting how things was done back in them days, like the Flagmans and all this kind of stuff.